Today, we're going to step back into the 80s and create this in HTML, CSS, and SVG. So you may be wondering, why would I be doing a tutorial on 80's Retrowave? Well, probably because at 500,000 subscribers, after you click subscribe, getting me one step closer, I'm doing a guitar playing reveal. And it's not just going to be me sitting here playing guitar for you. No, it's going to be a full track with a full music video set in the 80's Retrowave era. So, I don't know, maybe you should subscribe. Before we begin though, Linode, the sponsor of this video, makes it easy to host your site, your app, or service on whatever technology stack you use. With one-click apps like WordPress and Drupal, getting up and running is easy. With backend access to your server, customization options are all but limitless. A fully configurable DNS manager allows for you to easily switch your domain over to your new server, and SSL certificates can be installed for free using open source tools. So sign up using the link below to get $20 in credit on your new Linode account. All right, so the first thing that we want to do is to get in Adobe XD. We're going to design the SVG assets that we're going to be using. In fact, we're only going to have two different assets, and that's just going to be like the mountains and the little, I don't know, kind of like a sun background, and also a triangle. You could do the triangle in CSS, but I opted to do it this way just to make it more interesting. We get more flexibility, obviously, when we use SVG. So we're just going to use a Web 1920 by 1080 preset. And let's get rid of the layers for now. So I want the background for this to be black. So take the artboard, make it black. And what we'll do is get that kind of like a gradient-based background going, like a purple. Purple was kind of the thing back then. Sort of is now in terms of UI design as well, though. So probably right around here we'll start, and then for the fill, we'll choose linear gradient. And at the top we can see the lightest right here. We're going to want that to go to black, and then this color stop will be our purple. And I may not want it to be too vibrant of a purple, so I might come down like around there. All right, so that looks pretty good right there. So we're not going to see this line because on top of it, we're going to create a series of just a mountain range, essentially. And so this is a little bit tedious, so I'm just going to speed this part up. Here we go. So now I'm just going to connect it down here and right back to the initial starting point. I'm probably going to adjust some of those anchor points individually. I sort of wanted them to have all sort of like the same angle on the right and left. It just makes it look better, kind of messed up over here. I'm going to get rid of the border and give it a fill of black. So there we go. So now we have this sort of mountain range area. So if you need to fix things up a little bit just to eyeball the angles correctly, you can do so. I'm not going to be too picky about it though. All right, so that looks, you know, pretty much fine. It's not ideal right here, but I'm not going to let my OCD get in the way just for this quick tutorial. So now what we want to do is create a second range. You don't have to do this. I'm just choosing to do it. One that's kind of offset in the background a little bit more. To save time, if you wanted to, you can Control D to duplicate this, and we can get out our layers, put it behind this one. Wait, before we do that, we'll right click. No, we don't even have to do that. Sorry about that. We can just take this, hold Alt, and just go, just basically flip it. And then we can put it behind it and then take the opacity down. And then you can make some other adjustments to it to make it look more unique. So that's what I'm going to do. I'll go ahead and fast forward this section as well. All right, so something like that's fine. I mean, I don't want to get too picky. It's actually kind of difficult to get this looking correct as possible, and I'm okay with this. I might drag it down just a bit more. So I'm pretty happy with that. Now we're gonna do the sun, a weird sort of purplish hazy sun. So we'll take the ellipse tool. It'll be like that big or so, and then we will also, let's see here. I want to take everything, by the way. Move it down just a bit, move this up. There we go. And then what we're going to do is get this a linear gradient. And for this color at the top, we're just going to use like a kind of oranges, not an orangish, but a light purple or light pinkish color. This one is going to fade to black, and maybe not fade to black. Maybe it'll fade like to a darker. There we go. And then we need to position this between those two elements. Actually, no, I'm wrong about that. Way back there. In this case, this should have 100% opacity, but we should just adjust the color instead of the opacity just to make it darker. So let's come out here. And this, we're probably going to want to make this fade a little bit more into black here. So we can drag this up. We can also take the opacity down. That'll help as well. All right, so I think that's probably pretty decent. Let me think. What else would I want to do? Let's add this. And then I wanted to get more of this color in there. There we go. There, I like that. So just to give it more of a, this 80s vibe, we can kind of put like TV scan lines, if you will, the very low resolution. So that's another thing I'm choosing to do here on my own. So again, this is all stuff you don't have to do. So I have the ellipse tool, something pretty small like that. Get rid of the border. And we'll take the amazing repeat grid tool. Oh my God, I'm getting blinded. Let's make that black. There we go. And then we can adjust space between them. Let's pull a few down here. Let's ungroup it. And these all should be in their own group. Control G. All right, and we'll put it, let's see here. I'm going to make sure we have this in the correct, there we go. Yeah, right there is good. And of course this looks a little silly, so we're going to take the opacity down a lot. Down to like 4%. So you can still just see it. I'm not sure how that would translate onto video, but I like that. And so this is our single graphic. So what we want to do at this point is make sure you select everything and group them up. And we're going to call this, what did I call this before? Call it BG for background. So that way when we export it, it'll just go in a project folder as bg.svg. And then what else? The final asset is I want to have like this, for some reason, a big triangular, centerpiece was kind of popular. So we'll take the polygon tool, which is a triangle by default, hold shift. Let's rotate this, holding shift, there we go. Now it's pointing down. And the way I want to do this is instead of giving it a stroke or a border, we're going to keep a fill, get rid of the stroke, and then we're going to duplicate this, Control D, and then scale down just slightly, holding Shift and Alt, and then make this black. Get this in the center pretty good. We want to be a little bit thick or thinner, so let's drag up. There we go, right there. Now we're going to take both of these shapes with the Shift button selected, left click them, and then we can choose this option right here, subtract. All right, so now it is transparent in the middle. So now we can just take this and change the fill, and we can give it a interesting sort of gradient. So let's see, the way I want to do this, I think we'll go, it's mainly going to be like just shades of pink. So that'll be right there. We'll put another one right here. Maybe this will be a little bit more intense. Put another one right here next to it. This one will be lighter. And then we will take this and rotate it like that. I personally want it on that angle. Then we could take this one and just make it, another shade of pink or something. Awesome. And then finally, we'll take this and add a shadow. X and Y is going to be 0, and we're going to take the blur up, and then we're going to increase this and then change its here to like a purple. All right. That way it has kind of like a glow coming from it. And there we go. Sweet stuff. Okay, so now we want to take this, and instead of calling it subtraction 1, we'll just call this triangle, I guess. And then we're going to take both of these assets here, and then we will export selected as SVG, and you want to put this in a project folder. So I'm going to create a folder here. Why can I select this? Oh my God. Export. Oops, I saved them in the wrong place. Well, anyhow, you know what to do. Just export them in a new project folder in an images folder. Okay. So, all right. All right. So here I am in a new folder called Retro. That's what I'm calling it. We have an images folder, which it contains the triangle, the SVG, and the BG graphic that we saved. You can see it. They're not too massive. But that's okay. So now what we want to do is create an index.html. Let's close that out. Create a CSS folder with a main.sass file. You'll need the sass extension here for Visual Studio Code in the plugins area. Just type in live sass compiler. And then we will watch sass once you have that plugin running. And then right here, index.html, exclamation point for an Emmet abbreviation. If you don't know what that is, search my channel for Emmet. Just helps you write HTML quicker. And then we'll hit link, enter CSS main.css. Oh, by the way, if you don't know what sass is, check my channel for that as well. Helps writing CSS a little bit easier. The only thing I really take advantage is from just nested rule sets anyway. So now what we want to do is write out our HTML. Before we do that, right click and open with Live Server, another extension that you can install called Live Server. And that'll just launch a server here with hot reloading on here, ready to go. All right, so I'm going to position this over here so that we can kind of see as we code what we're doing. So let me get this moved. Hopefully I remember to edit this out. Probably won't. All right, there we go. So first we're just going to start with the HTML. All right, so what we'll do is we're going to have our initial just a heading and a subheading. So we have the title that's sitting on top of the triangle, and then like a little subtitle. In my case, it was design course, and then the subtitle was soundtrack. We're going to put those in a wrapper, a class, or a div rather. That way we can position them the way we want to. They're going to be positioned absolute themselves. So H1 attribute for that, but one second. I'm going to put design course. The H1 is going to have a data -text attribute so that it can be accessible in the CSS properties and the content property. You'll see how that works in a second. And then this is design course as well. We're going to replicate that, Shift Alt down arrow key, and then this is going to say soundtrack or whatever you want it to say. Same thing here. This is going to be H2. There we go. That's that. Don't worry, there's hardly any HTML associated with this. Next, we're going to have our image background. When I was trying this, I tried making the background, or the bg.svg, an actual background element in CSS on the body element, but I found that I was able to make this work instead. It was, I forget what was causing the issue with the other way. So I just decided to use this image element. So I'll just call this background. All right, and then next we're going to have graph container. All right, and when I say graph, that's going to be the part that we didn't design, the whole grid. I should have called it grid, but I'm just calling it graph. I don't even know why I would call it graph, but whatever. So there's a container in order to position this element, and this right here is all we need to create that grid with all the squares, and you'll see how that works, and that's very cool. All right, so we save it, and this is what we see so far. Looks like crap. All right, so now let's go to our main.sass file. And this is where we're going to spend most of our time. So first thing I'm doing, I'm going to import a couple fonts at the top. By the way, all this code is available at Codepen in the description. All right, so you don't have to sit here and type everything out by hand. All right, so those are the two fonts I'm using for the design course, and then this right here for the soundtrack. All right, so now we're going to put in just some stuff I put in usually for just about every project. This right here is going to specify box sizing, border box. That way we don't have to mess around with the calc function when we're dealing with padding and width and all that stuff. The body element, again, nothing exciting is happening here, so I'm just going to paste in some of these properties. So setting the margin to 0, background's black, height, 100 viewport height, margin 0 twice. What was I doing? Cancel that. And then font family, we're setting it to this. I guess we didn't necessarily have to do that, but there we go. So those are the changes that we have made so far. Still nothing that we can use very much. So image. So we have that single image for the background, which is this graphic right here. And we're going to do position fixed on this. Width is 100%. Top is going to be 30%. And then transition. Oh, I was only doing transition for myself and the purposes of displaying this, so it wasn't so janky, if you will. But if you wanted it, you could do this. I wouldn't suggest doing this if this was like a serious project. All right, there we go. So again, the width here, again, I'm not even sure if I needed to do position fixed. I think I did. By the way, when I'm setting all these rule sets up, I don't always know exactly what to do when I do it. So that's very important to understand. I guess if all you dealt with in your life was CSS, you might be able to get to that point, but there's a lot of experimentation and there's a lot of different ways to achieve the same thing. So just keep that in mind. Don't get discouraged if you're sitting there Googling different, methods of doing things, because pretty much everybody does that. All right, so we're gonna have our wrapper, which is this element right here. It's holding our two pieces of text. So we're going to say display grid, place items here, center, position is going to be absolute as well on this, and width 100%, height 100 viewport height, in Z index I'm setting to something high like 10. We'll see how this comes into play a little bit later. So let's work on this grid that's going to show up down here. So first we have the graph container, and again, I'll show you what that looks like. It's right here. So the graph container, all we have to set is overflow hidden, and that way it doesn't create horizontal scroll bars because we have this large grid that we're going to be skewing and perspective distorting essentially. Setting the height to 100 viewport height as well, and then we have the graph inside of it. So this is where a lot of work is going to be placed. Now, when I was looking at for a solution in terms of, how would you structure HTML and CSS to create this large grid of a bunch of squares, essentially? Initially, my initial thought was maybe just have a ton of, you'd have a parent container and then you have a bunch of child elements, one for each square. But you don't have to do that. So I found a solution. I'm going to link it in the description here, and it's pretty genius. So we simply use a background property with a linear gradient. So let me copy that, and it is big, but let me extend this all the way out. So we still can't even, it goes, yeah, it goes quite a ways. But what's essentially happening here is we have linear gradient, that's for creating gradients from going from one color to the next. We have an angle here, and then we have a couple colors, and then you can see at 0%. So you're essentially creating these color stops to get this to work. This is the color of the grid right here, and you have the other grid lines. You also have another linear gradient right here, set at, instead of 180 degrees, which is the horizontal lines, this is 90 degrees. Pretty much set up into the same properties. So if, I'm not going to try to explain exactly what every single little property is doing. After that, we have, in order to get this to work correctly, let me bring this back. We're going to say background size, 4EM, 2EM, and then 4EM and 2EM. And I'll experiment with these values to show what ends up happening. We can't see anything yet, so let's get that working. Background color, we're going to say black, and then height 40EM. There we go. Scary looking. And then we're going to put perspective 1,000 pixels. We're also going to put margin top 20EM, and then transform. What am I doing? Oh, transform perspective 200 pixels. Rotate X 45 degrees and scale 2. Look at that. Now, of course, I didn't just come up with these on my own. I experimented with them a lot to get them to work. Width, I'm not sure if we have to put, no, we don't have to put that. So if you change this to, like, say 4 and 4, it allows you to change how many grid lines appear. So the lower the number, the more you're going to get. So this is what I ended up sticking with. And it just scales up indefinitely. It's very, very cool. It's kind of like a just a nice solution, a dynamic solution. All right, so after that, we're going to have our H1 element. These things, which are hidden, almost. So we're going to have our H1, and inside of it, again, we're going to have a linear gradient. And I had this page up here. This is an old page. It's an old solution. If you go to Google and type CSS gradient generator, you'll find a mess of them. This is an older one. I used this one, I believe. I created this one, rather. And it gives you the CSS associated with it. And so I'm just going to copy and paste two of those properties to get us just to the gradient portion. All right, so where am I at? There we go. So notice when we do that, it's not, when you apply this linear gradient to text, it doesn't by default add it to the text. It adds it to the background, which is not what we want. We want the opposite. So you add two different properties, or rather three, and one that's vendor prefixed. And those are WebKit background clip text, and WebKit fill color transparent. Save. There we go. Isn't that awesome? So now let's reset the font size to 2EM. We'll do the transition thing. Again, I wouldn't do that anyways if this were a serious project. And then position absolute, and text transform uppercase. All right. I didn't really mean for it at this point to sit right there, but yeah, we'll make it responsive too. After this, we want to target the after selector here, and we want to kind of make this really stick out more. And we can do this with background none, and we specify content attribute data text. That's coming from the data text property, or the attribute rather, right here. All right. And then we're going to position this up. All right. And then we're going to add this text shadow. And again, you're going to want to go to Codepen because it's a multi-step text shadow setup right here. So you see this comma at the end of each one of these. This is something as well that I found on the internet, this particular property, that seemed to do a very good job for this type of retro look. So they already had it set up like that. Now, of course, it's sitting on top as you can see. So to fix that, we set Z index to -3. All right. So the other text is back behind it, so it's kind of screwing up the look. But when we get this larger, you'll see the effect a little bit more than what you see it now. Because it's not just this shadow right here. There's like a blue one as well, which is why we have multi-steps right here. All right. Next, we're also going to target a before selector, and this is going to be for our triangle. So, and before. So again, this is still all just on our H1 element. So we're going to say content is empty, position absolute, top, and this is where I was experimenting just with the position of it. And then let's skip to the background property real quick. We're going to put URL, images, triangle, and no repeat. All right, we don't see it just yet. Background size, I found that 7.5 EM worked. Again, we don't see it yet. We need to specify left 0 and a width and a height. So 3 EM and 4 EM. There, we're starting to see it now. And then we'll do width, 100%. And there we go. Z index, we want it to sit behind all those elements, so -4. All right. Now we still see this weird black stuff right here, but that's only because we have our H2 element that we haven't dealt with yet. So let's deal with the H2 element as well. So the H2 element is actually really similar to the H1. So what I'm going to do is paste in our text shadow property. All right, you can't really see it because it's behind there. So let's get that stuff worked out. So we're gonna make the color this pink color. So I'm just gonna use the RGB value right there. And let's get this position so we can see the damn thing. So font size is gonna be 2 EM. And we're going to, let's see here, transform, rotate Z, -15 degrees. There we go. And we also have position absolute. That's the main one. I think that we need to get to push it down. Font family is going to be that courgette. I don't even know if that's how you pronounce it. There we go. And let's see here. Transition, font size, 1 second. All right. And then we're also going to add, that should not be right on top. I think I'm missing a property. Let's see here. Not margin top. What am I doing? Top. Actually, yeah, it is margin top. I'm gonna try like 3.5 EM. And there we go. Now, if you wanted to see this whole the triangle, all you have to do, by the way, I forgot to mention this, is increase the height. You know, like that. I personally thought it looked cool being cut off like that. So maybe we'll just do 5 or like 4.7 EM. There we go. All right, so there we go. So now it works here, but it's not very responsive in that this element ends up getting hidden, and the design course thing, it all stays small. So let's fix that up. So this is where we're going to be messing with a mess of media queries. So I'm not going to type these all out. I'm going to paste each one in. So we have a first one at minimum width 768. So we're simply taking the background position and changing it up from the body. If we scroll up, we'll see the background position by default for mobile is not there. Okay. Really? Okay. Sorry, that's old code. We didn't need that. Idiot. Image. There we go. So now if we expand this, yay. Notice how the background gets moved, and because it looks real smooth because we have that transition property on there. You don't really want that on there. It's just for the purpose of the tutorial. All we're doing is the image, we're adjusting the top position so that it repositions this, the H1 element font size, resetting the font sizes, and that's it. That's all you have to do. The next ones, we have 3 more that I'm going to paste in. And the way I found these values is just to experiment. So like if you hit Control Shift I and you go in and out, it'll tell you the width that you're currently at. So if it starts breaking, like right here, this is broken, then you'll know which pixel value to target in your media query so you can start rewriting stuff. And that's the concept of responsive design anyway. So these are the 3 that I did. Let's save them. And now you'll see how these start to adjust themselves accordingly. All right, guys, so hopefully you enjoyed that. If you did, make sure to subscribe because at 500,000 subscribers, I'm going to be jamming out one of these guitars on a full track and a music video inspired by 80's Retrowave. I mean, it's going to be freaking awesome. Well, probably, you've seen these guitars up here for quite a while. And it's not just any track. Maybe you should. Oh, guys, I can't even see. All right, guys. So hopefully you enjoyed that. Of course you did. And no, that's stupid. I mean, you just sound like a asshole.